be happy to call the roll.
Thank you.
Ramsey Stevens,
Present.
Sam Goodstein,
Present.
Wes Blackman,
Here.
Joyce Brown,
Here.
Jerry Clairday, Anthony Gallegos,
Here.
Daniel Morgan,
Here.
Philip Ross Monroe, Deborah Robert,
Here.
Zaid Shamsi Basha, Dave Wilson.
Okay. Thanks, Madam Clerk. And Ms. Robert, would you be comfortable leading us in the pledge?
I sure would.
Okay, thank you.
I pledge
Allegiance
allegiance to
to the flag of the United States of America
and
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one nation, under God, indivisible,
with
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And do we have a motion to approve the minutes from our August 25th meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. In a second. Thank you, Mr. Goodstein. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, motion passes unanimously. And with that, that brings us to the new business of the day. So this is really just a discussion of what we have voted on to date in recognition of the fact that I think we've presented enough items for the commission's consideration at this time, especially in anticipation of the ballot. So in light of that, I have actually gone ahead and taken the clerk's organized list of actions that we've taken to date and put them into a presentation, which I'd like to pull up on the screen. But Ms. Clairday has raised her hand, so I believe she's in the waiting room.
Okay, let me promote her to panelist.
And while we do that, I will try and share my screen. Here we go.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Clairday, thank you for joining us. We will note your attendance. Okay. All right. So let me start off here by noting that I will not be able to make this presentation on the 5th. I have a long-standing obligation that week that I won't be able to step away for even digitally. So our esteemed Vice Chair, Mr. Goodstein, will be doing this presentation. But just to quickly recap, and then we can open this up for discussion. We have approved 5 formal recommendations to the commission so far. I believe 4 out of 5 of them will require a ballot vote of some form, and they respectively are allowing for concessions by candidates. As you can see, I put these, I think, in order of most benign, or at least easiest to address. And I noted that, this was something we had unanimous committee support for. I then did ranked choice voting in that we support it, but are just calling for a resolution. And this is the one that I'm obviously doesn't need a ballot. Then limited use of runoffs, same thing, unanimous committee support. And then term limits, this gets to, I think, the first real material one. And Ms. Brown, this is one that requires, I think, your feedback on, because if you go back and you look at the minutes, everyone, including yourself, was in favor of term limits,
Yes.
and of 2 limits, right? It just wasn't a unanimous vote, right? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So
I think there were two contrary votes, I believe.
Yes,
as I
it
recall.
was you,
Yeah.
you and our previous vice chair. But you were both strongly in favor of, actually a more aggressive form of term limits, right?
Yes.
So I think it's worth us highlighting that to the commission, right? That all of us were in favor of term limits of 2 terms of some form, even if it wasn't a unanimous vote. And then the last one being single member districts, of course, which we did not have unanimity or full support on explicitly. So that's the homework we have as of now. I think it might be productive, Mr. Goodstein, for you to comment on what you think of that presentation and what else you'd like to see, and then we can take it from there.
I've been thinking about this, and I'm not sure. I mean, it's a presentation, and as we have recently learned in commission meetings, presentations are not opportunities for dialogue.
I'm sorry, may I interject for a moment?
Absolutely.
I'm the one that does the agenda. I am not planning to make this a presentation. I'm planning to make this a new business item, discussion of possible ballot initiatives. Therefore, you won't have the 10-minute time constraint.
Okay. Well,
And they'll be able to discuss and maybe come to some consensus about how to move forward.
I wanted to get everybody's feeling on whether I am presenting these things simply to the commission. I don't know that I can fairly characterize your views on things. I can say, we came to this, but it is quite likely that they're going to say, well, what did you mean? Or why did you do that? And I'm not quite sure, because that will flavor whether they're receptive to something or not. Is that, you know, I frankly am not really very comfortable trying to characterize the detailed discussions we have had. Do people have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
I think that if they ask for discussion, or I think that we can prepare something in addition at the next meeting that we can all agree upon as a statement that we can then return to them.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, you had your hand raised.
For the things that weren't unanimous, maybe they could have like we could have a dissent, and then we could have you know, the majority what they thought. You know, we could choose somebody to write out the reasoning behind single member districts, which I believe is the only item that didn't receive unanimous support. Is that correct?
No.
Functionally, that is correct. Yeah.
Well, yeah, then maybe for those things that received the unanimous support, you know, just whoever thinks they could, you know, describe it best, could probably write like the reasoning behind it. You know, if it has unanimity, I'm pretty sure that, you know, anybody who wants to write it out could point to all the things that are positive about it. Now, the only thing is the one that didn't receive unanimity with the single member districts. I'm sure the people who voted, you know, differently would want to state their reasoning behind that.
I don't know if I want to get that complex in this, because then there's that just feels wrong, because it's yes, Deborah.
No, Mr. Blackman is next. Excuse me, Ms. Roberts.
Sorry.
Mr. Blackman.
Yeah, I would just like to point out that we're 12 minutes now into the meeting. And I think we could make bullet points under the item that related to single member districts, because if I recall the vote, there was kind of a pile on at the end when one motion failed or not failed, but it was not a unanimous vote. But then I remember changing my vote because I wanted to not be on record to be against single member districts. So I think we came around towards the end, and maybe just the time we have tonight, maybe put some bullet points underneath that we're comfortable with and can agree upon might be a good idea to give Sam some guidance.
Okay, Ms. Robert.
I'm basically going to parrot what Mr. Blackman just said. Is I think tonight, you know, since we're all here, we can get these things fresh in our minds. Why not go through some bullet points now and then re-rack the next time we meet and make sure it's all fleshed out,
Okay,
to all.
that sounds
And
good.
are we in, and Madam Clerk, I see you have your hand, but real quick, I just want to confirm, are we in general consensus that all of these items where we are unanimous don't really need further explanation? I mean, I think the fact that we are a originally 13-member committee, still 11, that we've met pretty intensively and exhaustively on all these subjects. I mean, I'm kind of the opinion that for everything we were unanimous on, the fact that we're unanimous is enough weight, right? I mean, if they want to go against all 11 of us, that's kind of on them. And these are all pretty benign, I think, kind of self-evident issues, except for the last one, which does certainly warrant, I think, a broader discussion and some bullets. But that's my 2 cents. Madam Clerk, you had your hand up.
Yeah, what I was going to say is what I sent out, the approved actions with the motion and the vote. My suggestion would be to not include that. That was for all of you to see. My feeling is that the ballot initiatives are presented on their own without, it's enough that they passed. It doesn't matter what the vote was. That was really for all of you. So I think you can just, that Vice Chair Goodstein can just say, these are the 5, if it is 5, these were the 5 ballot initiatives that we would like to see move forward. And then you can certainly have bullet points for each of them without having to go in who voted for what, why. That's just my opinion.
I'd be more comfortable with that.
Okay.
So when it comes to
I mean-
I'm sorry, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but when it comes
No,
to the
Mr. Morgan, please.
member, it's just gonna be the positives then. We're not gonna, since it passed our committee, there's no need to, we just talk about the reasons why it was approved then. No need to bring in anything else.
Correct.
Okay.
I wonder about that though, because when we did talk about at large versus single district, I mean, we did talk about perhaps someday expanding at least on discussion of, to at large. I mean, I don't know if maybe we should bring in some of the discussion points that we had that led us to that bullet point. I'm not saying as a positive or negative, but just some of the different elements that came in and out until we came to the agreement.
Well, I think if they want that, our position, our meetings are easily available to watch.
Good point.
Which I think speaks to the force of our recommendations, right? Is say, Mr. Vice Chair, you can readily say to him, hey, if you have any question about how exhaustively and we examine these things and how much due diligence we did on them, watch our meetings, right? And I think, frankly, I think there's only 2 that they're going to try and that they not even try. And this is very presumptive of me, but I could see that the only 2 that they would negotiate with you will over are the term limits and the single member, right? The rest of them to me are, I don't think there'd be any reason that they would push back on them.
Yeah, no, the other 2 have been corrections to the process that have been long, I think, awaited. And if we think of anything else like that we can throw in there that's a gimme, we could do that.
Well, I think that gets to the the remainder of our remit as a committee, right? We did kind of rush these out, recognizing that there was an opportunity to get them on the ballot. Not necessarily wanting to have more than 4 questions on the ballot. But I at least I envision us as a committee continuing to meet. Maybe we want to discuss how much we're meeting and the speed at which we're meeting. But I think we as a committee should continue to meet to discuss some of these more less controversial cleanup items for the next ballot. And who knows? I mean, maybe we want to use two whole new ballots. Yes, Mr. Blackman, and then Ms. Brown.
When the commission talked about this last, and the clerk was very helpful in informing them about our decision regarding November elections based on the input by the supervisor of elections. I think it was at that meeting where the supervisor of elections made the presentation. I think that it's important to maybe add another slide that we are not yet done, that these words seem to either be the easier or the most important, and maybe emphasize that, and saying that we're going to continue to meet and review other parts of the charter for recommendations, and you'll be hearing from us again in the future. But we wanted to get these out just in case they wanted to get it on a ballot in the near future rather than later.
I will lead with that, in fact, so that they understand that it's not when they're ready and listening rather than at the end.
Ms. Brown, and then our esteemed clerk.
Okay, I don't think we've covered all of the election issues, and I think we need to continue to do that, even though we don't have time for this particular presentation. When we were chosen to be on this committee, a number of us said that we wanted to approach our constituencies with a lot of these issues. And I think COVID has put a stop to a lot of that, but I think I would like to, in fact, I've set up something to approach a constituency of mine, which are elected Democrats in Palm Beach County with email addresses. I have 1,200 names. I know other people have other constituencies. I would like to email them with a lot of the issues that we're discussing to see how they feel about these issues. I'm very aware that public comments take a very, very long time to read and go through. I assume that of the 1,200 people, more than half of them will unfriend me or whatever it is on MailChimp, so that there won't be that many. But I would compile every issue either for what I'm supporting or against what I'm supporting for the group, mail it to Melissa so that you can all see what the response is among those 1,200 or so people. And then I would encourage everybody else with a constituency to reach out, because I think the more people that know more, I have in the entire list of every registered voter up until the last election. And it took me hours to go through and pull out the email addresses. There are phone numbers if people want to do texting. But that's much slower. And I just think we need to know what people in the community are feeling, and they need to know what we're doing, because there are so many issues that we need to address on this charter. And enough said. That's what I plan to do. But I wanted you to know before I did it.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Madam Clerk?
Well, what I was going to say is when the resolution and revised resolution regarding this committee, the original intent was to get something on next November's ballot, so November of 22. And then when the supervisor of elections did her presentation and said, no, we don't put municipal questions on a ballot other than a municipal ballot, I let the commission know that you were working very diligently to bring something possibly for the March 22. So I would think that they might decide to, because the resolution had deadlines that really don't apply anymore. So after this round of suggestions, they might, we could bring something back, or I could bring back the resolution and extend it. Maybe not even have a time frame, but then the next goal would be having questions for the March 2023 election. We don't have any candidates on that, but there could be ballot questions. And if there's a special election, that's why there are a couple of municipalities that are having elections in November, special elections, because it's not a typical election. It's just to fill Elsie Hastings. So I don't think that the commission will look at this and say, great job, thanks so much. I think they will see this as the beginning of a longer process.
Good.
Okay, so then, I mean, are we in general consensus as to what this presentation is going to look like on the 5th? I mean, Sam, do you feel that you have clear direction from us? What else do you need?
I guess what I just want to know is, I'll be satisfied if we say, does anyone want to add bullet points? I am not going, I guess what I wanted to say, what I didn't say clearly was, I am not going to get up there and try and characterize any of the discussion we have had. I'm going to go up there and say, this is what the committee voted on. I'm not going to try and misrepresent and therein end up misrepresenting anybody's views, including my own. This is not going to be a lengthy presentation in any way. It may be, there may be questions I'm happy to answer, but if you want to add bullet points to any of them right now, I will stick to that. Does that give a better sense of what I'm trying to communicate? I'm not a
Very much so.
mouthpiece. I'm not a mouthpiece. I'm just somebody giving a report on things that they can consider. Then, have at it. I'm throwing meat to the dogs. That's nasty. I'm putting something on the table for them to discuss.
Mr. Morgan?
So do we, in that case, do we really need bullet points then? Because for example, one example, we decided to do single member district voting. Let's say if I suggested that a bullet point should be, the committee decided on this because we believe it will lead to better representation. Will that offend? Would some of the people who had different ideas, who voted against it, would that offend them? You know what I mean? Or should we just do away with any bullet points, really? Because some of them might lead, to what somebody didn't really believe.
I think that's a very good point, Mr. Morgan. My inclination at this time is that we leave the presentation kind of uneditorialized, right? It's just, this is the force of our actions, right? We editorialized, we discussed, we did due diligence, and here's the action we came to. They'll have that as backup. What I will note here, and this kind of speaks to Ms. Brown's point, is, everyone on this committee is totally entitled to submit public comment, submit direct comments, to organize public comment, right? So that's something else. Is I think in the same way you would treat any other backup or action item before the commission, you should do so. Yes, Madam Clerk.
Can't hear
You are
you.
muted.
Yeah, I just noticed that. So of the 4 potential ballot questions, 2 term limits are not, there's nothing about anything related to that in the charter, nor about conceding. The other 2 are actually directing something in the charter. So my suggestion would be maybe for the presentation for the single member districts and the 40% plus 1, show what's currently in the charter so they can see what's in the charter and then how it would change. The other 2 would just be adding something into the charter that has not been addressed.
Sam, are you comfortable with that? I like that idea.
Sure.
Okay, and then Ms. Clariday.
Good evening. I was just going to make the suggestion, present it as is, and then if they have questions, let them organize them, then send them to us, and then we can organize the answers and then send them back, and that alleviates all of this preemptive and potentially unnecessary planning on our end.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Good. I agree.
And I think the issues are well enough known to them that they will immediately recognize the pros, cons, and that they've already thought of these things. They already have positions on them, right? I don't think it's going to be like, oh, we didn't realize we needed to do this, or we didn't realize some people would want that.
And they will have the backup for 2 weeks prior. Yes, Madam Clerk. Oh, you have your hand up. Okay. so then
Raised it before, I'm
sounds-
sorry, I forgot to lower it.
No, it's okay. So, all right. So then I think we have clear guidance. We're not going to editorialize. We're going to rely on the force of our actions. We'll provide facts as it relates to what's in the charter and, you know, how our actions correspond. But that's pretty much it. I mean, we as a committee, that was our job. Vote on actions. We're giving them to
And I will begin with a statement. Here's what I just jotted down, that we are nowhere near done. We have yet to go to the citizens for input, but we did focus on a few things so that the commission could consider putting them on the upcoming ballot should you choose.
Good statement.
So
What about that little part where we didn't go to the citizens, but not for all issues, right? Because we did go to citizens for the things that we're submitting to the commission, right? Like we did discuss this with our neighbors and our friends and Lake
well,
Worth.
yeah, but we didn't, as a commission, as a committee, we did not go to, and there was talk of that. We may or may not do that. But we didn't have, you know, a meeting in each precinct.
Just feel like the wording makes it sound like, you know, which is obviously not true, but it just makes it sound like we all, whatever Daniel thinks is what Daniel decided, you know what I mean? And what each individual, you know, clearly we were chosen or appointed to this committee because we live in Lake Worth, we talk to the people in Lake Worth, the people we know in Lake Worth, you know what I mean? Like it just sounds, I would suggest an edit to that, or rephrasing of not going to the citizens.
All right, I'll just clip it.
Yes, Mr. Blackman.
Yeah, I would just go back to what I was saying, that present this as our current product, but we are still a work in progress, and that's why we're there to talk to them, to get their input. And we really, because of COVID and other restrictions and just time, we haven't had a lot of time meeting as a committee. I think the expectation of the commission when the charter review committee was formed was that we would be going out to the community and having community meetings and knocking on doors and soliciting input. And that just hasn't happened. So what they're getting now is just the talking amongst ourselves. And this is the product after a couple months of worth of meetings. And I would say a status report. And they can take things, if they are satisfied with the work that we've done so far and want to run with it, fine. If they don't think it's quite ready yet, fine, we'll know that. But I think it'll be interesting to kind of gauge our future action based on their response. But I think it's important to say that we really have not had the public input that they expected at the formation of the committee.
And Wes, you bring up a good point. This is a bit of a litmus test for us as to how seriously they take it. Because there are two on here that are gimmies, right? There are two on here that are no brain required to do it. If they don't put those on the ballot, I'm going to consider this committee pretty much defunct, frankly. If they don't put the 40% plus one on, I'm going to say, okay, it doesn't matter how good a thing we bring to them, you know, or the concession, 40% plus one, maybe they won't do it. If they don't do the concession thing, I'm going to say, all right, there's nothing, no matter how good a thing we bring to it, it's unlikely they're going to take it very seriously. That's just me. I mean, I'll keep coming.
Have more faith. Have more faith. Have more faith, Sam.
What's that?
Have faith. I said, have more faith.
Have faith. Put not your faith in princes, right? Isn't that in Shakespeare?
Okay. Before we get too literary here, not that that's a bad thing. All right. So then, I mean, seeing no further hands here, I think you have clear direction, Mr. Goodstein. We have another meeting before your presentation on the 5th, towards the end of this month. We had tentatively scheduled that to discuss community outreach. I'm questioning if that is necessary at this point. I mean, unless there is some idea for something more explicit, I think ultimately it behooves this committee to do the organizing community outreach that we all already do, focused around these action items in front of the commission. And then I really think our community outreach has to kick into gear once they put things on the ballot. That at least is my perspective, right? Yes, Ms. Brown.
I would like to consider the partisan question. I think we've pretty much established that there's no rule against it. Naming candidates, with the letter of their political or non-political party next to their names. And I think, again, this gives us a lot of information about who each of the candidates are for our ability to elect the candidates we want to see in office. So, yes, Sam.
Well, Ms. Brown, did you, Mr. Goodstein, I just want to ask a point of information here. Ms. Brown, did you get a response from the city attorney on that?
Exactly.
Do you want to answer that, Melissa? Because I think the response is that no one can find any reason not to do this. There were a couple of questions about whether you'd have to hold a primary, and I truly don't believe that would be necessary. I don't think any candidate needs to go up against another candidate of their same party in a primary. I just think people need the information to know who they are voting for and what they're voting for. And it's just a little bit more information, that people can have. And at this point, you're not able, if you're working on any of the campaigns, to tell anybody, and who you are or what you represent, but by the party that you're in. And I think that's a mistake in terms of information. That's all.
Okay, I think you're getting into the material discussion of this item, which I'm not against discussing. Madam Clerk, can you confirm if it is even possible? I mean, is it something that we can discuss at a future meeting?
Yes, so I did talk to Glenn about this. He said he can't find anything. I actually wrote to the state this week. I have not heard back yet. So I want to wait until till the state responds, because I told them I'm pretty good at finding stuff in the statutes. I have to do it all the time. I only found something regarding judges, which obviously isn't applicable. As Joyce said that Glenn said something about a primary, and I wrote him back. I said, well, it's not like you can only have 2 candidates running. I don't think that would apply, because we could have 30 people running for a seat there. So I don't see why there'd be a primary. A primary is to pick one candidate from a party to run. That wouldn't apply to our elections. And he said, okay. So I think that's kind of a moot point. So I would think by our next meeting, I should have a response. If we choose not to meet at the end of the month, when I get the response, I will email it to everybody.
Can I just say that I want to thank Melissa for her due diligence. She is amazing. She looks into everything. She spends hours researching everything. I hope she stays with us forever.
Yes, we've all.
Let's not wish that on Melissa.
Thank you.
Yeah. Madam Clerk, you have spoiled us terribly. I mean, truly. Yes, Ms. Robert.
Yeah, I just want to say in terms of politicizing city elections, I think that's going to be something that's going to be huge, even if we start discussing it. And that's something that definitely we would want to talk to anyone that votes on that. We've been a city that kind of doesn't look that way. We're not voting for political position per se. We're voting for city needs, municipality needs. So that's a big hurdle for us, and something we definitely have to talk about in depth.
Yeah, so completely agreed. And that's why I would like to kind of table this discussion. I think we owe it to Ms. Brown to have it, right? Yeah. It might be very short, right? It could be a very long discussion, right? But it was not publicly noticed, so we can't take any action on it. But that gets back to where I was going was, does our next meeting need to be on, should we take a break, right? I mean, we have a big deliverable for the commission. There's no other rush here. We're not going to add anything else to this round of the ballot. So should we just pick up in October? And we can start there if you want. We will continue with election issues before we get into the other more granular stuff. And secondly, do we need to continue meeting twice monthly? I always want to say bi-monthly. Semi-monthly, I think, is the correct term. because there's not as much urgency, right? I think what we're looking at going forward, probably besides this one, is a little easier and we have more time. Yes, Mr. Vice Chair.
Yes. Has the supervisor of elections weighed in on the party thing? That's my,
I did not speak to her about it yet. I want to find out what the state says and not waste her time if it's
Okay.
a moot point.
Well,
I would like to.
That next to the person's name would be the designation of party. That's really the only thing that would change on the ballot.
I'd like to know if we'd be the only.
Something would have to change, obviously, to change it from nonpartisan to partisan in the charter. But, and anyway, I want you all to bear in mind, these questions, should they choose to put questions on the ballot, will be for the March 22 election ballot, which means they won't go into force until our next election in March of 2023.
And with regard to meeting, I think taking a break.
Okay, Ms. Robert? Ms. Robert, you're muted.
I was on a roll. I think taking a break right now until we see what commission comes back with and maybe what kind of questions they put forward makes sense. I think staying with twice a month right now until we got a couple things under our belt with what commission comes back with, and also some of the little pressing items like we just brought up. I had one more point. I will bring it up. It just fell out of my brain. I'll be right back with that.
We'll be back to you. And Ms. Clariday?
Okay, a break sounds lovely, but I would, if the commission has questions or wants clarification or something, then it might behoove us to keep that meeting on the books with cancelability if they don't have questions. That was just my thought.
That's a good thought. That meeting is before they would have the opportunity to send us questions, though. But that does speak to when, if we are going to take the break, when we should meet. And obviously I'd like to meet as soon after they've met as possible, right? Because I think that's where we're at right now. Is we need a little feedback, and when we get that feedback, then we can have a whole new sense of direction, or the same sense of direction, right? So if they meet on the 5th, the next Monday is Indigenous Peoples and Columbus Day, but we could. I mean, I have no problem meeting on the 11th, but we could meet that week and take it from there. Yes, Mr. Blackman.
I would just say that it sounds to me like it would make sense to go to monthly meetings after this commission meeting and forego the second meeting this month.
Okay, and then Ms. Robert?
And I can make a motion to that effect.
Yeah, I think perhaps we could go to once a month. The one thing I think that really sticks out for me, perhaps because I'm not used to doing it, is that we want to approach voters. We want to get their ideas and get their feedback. I'd really love for us to all kind of dial down on a method that's kind of across the board, how we're all going to do that, or is there a way that we're going to all collaborate and make sure that we cross, all districts and like that, make sure we get in touch with as many people as we can. Because some people have better methods than others. And I'd like to know if there's a way that we can all kind of even it all out for everyone that votes.
Well, I suspect some of the folks, or actually I know some of the folks on this committee are very experienced political organizers. They can disclose that or not. Yes, Mr. Morgan.
I have a question about something totally different. If you want to continue to finish that thought on that topic.
Well, okay, so
you have a motion on the table.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Blackman, was that a formal motion?
Yeah, I said I would make the motion, so
Okay.
I'm going to take the leap and make the motion
Okay.
instead of just saying I would make the motion. Yeah,
I
so
want-
I
can-
made a
can-
motion, everyone.
Could I, before we vote on that motion, could I just ask a question? Because it has to do with, with the meetings and stuff like that. Would you mind,
Please.
Mr. Blackman? Is there any chance, and I don't know if Joyce was interested, like, is there any chance to get that question that Joyce had about disclosing party affiliation on the 2022 ballot? Or are we saying that we don't have enough time to propose that before the October 5th meeting?
I'm sorry, are you asking me, Mr. Morgan?
I'm asking everybody because it seems like we're done discussing things that we're going to propose for the 5th. Is that right? And I'm curious, is there any possibility that we could talk about the topic that Joyce brought up and see if we can also add that in anticipation? Let's say I know the Madam Clerk was talking about that by the time we were scheduled to meet again, we'll probably have an answer from the state. And so if we flesh out like our ideas, then by that, if we choose to have that meeting, we could have a quick vote if we somehow find a way to discuss it prior to that. I don't know if like a feel of the room, if anybody would be interested in putting up that motion. I don't know if Joyce, I kind of want to know if you would be interested, Joyce. Okay.
Absolutely.
Mr. Morgan and Ms. Brown, let me jump in here. There is not enough time on the calendar. The issue is that we'd have to have taken action at this meeting. So it would have had to have been, because it would have had to have been 2 weeks before the 5th to make the backup. That's the problem. And we don't necessarily have all the due diligence we need at this time, nor has it been publicly noticed for this meeting. So it's you have a traffic jam in terms of schedule in adding anything more for the 5th. So I mean, I would love to add more, right? I'd love to discuss this item and get it out of the way, but we don't have all the information we need. It wasn't noticed. And if you work backwards from the 5th, right? And this is being very generous, it'd be the 21st. So,
Well, is the only, what goes in backup other than I am appearing to give a report?
Well, that's actually a good question because I do the agenda packets. Is it just going to be discussion of potential ballot questions? Or do you want the potential ballot questions as part of the backup? Then they would know
I'm strongly
in advance.
Yeah, Madam Clerk, forgive me for interrupting. I'm strongly of the opinion that you include the backup, right, of Sam's presentation, so that way, this gets back to our prior discussion, they have time to process, they don't come in without anything, and we all respectively can engage the community about those items. So
the backup deadline is next Monday, the 20th, for the October 5th meeting. The agenda will be published on the 23rd, the whole packet. Just so you know.
But if I don't give you anything for my presentation, there's nothing to put in the backup other than I am an agenda item to present.
Well, we could work together and create something.
I'm just saying, Ramsey, I think maybe you're mistaken, because unless I am providing a written report, there's nothing in the backup other than me being there. So therefore, the 2-week deadline is met. And if we added something in our next scheduled meeting, I could present it.
okay. I mean, so if everyone wants to hold our meeting on the 27th and have that be a discussion of partisan versus nonpartisan municipal elections, we can do that with the clerk's blessing. That would then be our product from that would be factored into the October 5th meeting. Would that work, Madam Clerk?
Yes, and if I get an answer from the state that there's no way possible of making municipal elections partisan, I can email everybody and we wouldn't need to have the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, I like that idea. Yes, Ms. Claire Day.
I don't understand the merit in even having that on there. I understand that one person believes that there's merit, but I don't see the merit, and I'm not exactly sure if it merits taking the time until we get the answer from the authorities.
Well, Ms. Claire, there's two ways to handle that. One, you could just make a motion at this time to not discuss it. I would advise against that. That would be I think that'd be a little aggressive to your fellow committee members, right? But granted, when we meet on the 27th to discuss this, you are, encouraged to make a motion to whatever you believe, right, as soon as possible, right? So it could very well be a very short discussion. I do think we should, talk about it for a moment, though. Ms. Robert.
Yeah, I'm questioning because we just talked about kind of taking a break, waiting for the commission to come back and seeing where that holds. What is the rush now to pop this in immediately? I mean, this is something I'd like to take a little bit of time in and explore before I even have an opinion. It is something that is going to be a very, very big topic for the city. So I don't know that going quickly on this is going to help anyone. I don't know.
Yes, Mr. Morgan.
So I think all these are things that are decided once we vote on a motion. If Joyce, right? Like these are things that will be decided once if a motion is passed or not. So I think Joyce has to.
Well, I'm not going to make a motion for it right now until we know. I think we have the option, according to Melissa, to know before the next meeting possibly, and then hold the next meeting to do this. I will, in the meantime, send out a 1,200 person email on this and all of our bullet topics to see what kind of feedback we get, and I'll share it with you. I'll share
but Joyce, if it doesn't get on the agenda for the next meeting,
then it won't be in the ballots.
Then it won't be on the ballot.
That's true.
This time though,
And
that is worth noting.
For 2022.
Well, we have an opportunity every 10 years to address the issue of the charter. And I'm thinking there are a lot of issues that we need to consider, not just this one. Some aspirational issues that may not even be possible, but we might want to say Lake Worth City supports them, for the future of, for instance, voting rights, for, like universal voting rights, things like that we may want to take a position on as a city in our charter. And if it occurs, not have to wait 10 years for that to be included again. So, there are a lot of civil rights issues and a lot of civil liberty issues that could be dealt with in this way. They don't have to, if we can't do it for this particular time, I'm willing to wait another year, just as long as we get it in there in time for another election so that people have more information. I think the broader we make our voting abilities, the broader we make our voting rights, the better city we are. And I think aspirational things will help us do that.
Mr.
I totally digress then. I'm sorry. I totally digress.
Okay, Mr. Goodstein, then Ms. Robert, then Mr. Blackman.
All right. I think that, well, in principle, we could decide something on the nonpartisan, but having parties designated thing. I'd be reluctant to go fast on that, and I think the commission would be even more reluctant to go fast on that. So let me just say, I don't think I'm perfectly willing to have a discussion at a meeting on the 27th. I'd be extra reluctant to act on it. And even if we did go ahead and act on it in a manner which Joyce, you seem to want, my guess is that the commission would not engage in that, because I think that the first thing, if I looking in the real world, the first thing that would happen if Lake Worth did that, if everybody said you can do that, is Lake Worth would be sued. And I couldn't even tell you which party would sue them, probably both. And then, et cetera, et cetera. So
that's an interesting anticipation.
I think it's better to
Yeah.
take our time with that.
Yeah, so Mr. Goodson, I think you're getting to the fact that we need to actually take a vote this evening on what we want to do when we want to discuss this item, right? but I jumped in here, Miss Robert.
Another, I just wanted to ask, Joyce, you're sending it out to 1,200 people, which is a good number. Are they all city people? They're
Everybody, they're all-
Democrats, but it's all within,
All Lake Worth Democratic voters who listed their email address, not all Lake Worth Democratic voters, but the ones who listed their email address. There are additional folks who listed their phone numbers, but I can only do 100 phone numbers a day, and I can do this in like an hour. So, and I'm actually going to do it in Creole and Spanish as well.
got it. So it's all residents is what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all voters.
Got it.
And
Thank
if anyone has another list of other voters in other categories, please do this. But this is the constituency I care about, and I want to see what they think.
Mr. Blackman, and then Ms. Clariday.
Yes, a couple things. One, Ms. Brown mentioned the 10-year review of the charter. I don't think that's written down. And I think that's part of the problem. And
Okay.
I think that's why we had to meet as a charter review committee and had to have a special action by the commission. And maybe that can be one of our recommendations too. I don't know if we can squeeze it in under the wire. I think that would be fairly non-controversial, but it is a standard practice. And I could dig up some examples of that for other municipalities, that there is a 10-year cycle and review of the charter. But it's not a given right now. And then I'm really strongly feeling that it is not appropriate to talk about the partisan issue before this presentation before the commission. I think it would be something that will go down a rabbit hole, and we would lose the power of the other stuff that we're presenting. And I don't think we've had the time to adequately prepare ourselves to make a case, whatever that would be, individually. I'm just putting words in people's mouth there, but that's how I feel. And I just want to remind people that I do have a motion on the floor to cancel the second meeting this month and to meet once monthly thereafter. And it needs a second, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Miss Clariday.
I thought I heard you, Chair Stevens, ask if there were any other municipalities in Palm Beach County that had the partisan affiliation, and I wasn't sure if that was answered. They're not.
No, I know for a fact, and the clerk is confirming that there are none in Palm Beach County.
Okay.
My question is, are there any in the state?
Elections.
Okay.
Yeah.
I misunderstood.
Is there?
Thank you.
I want to know if anyone in the state of Florida, right? And then I'd even look more broadly. What states have nonpartisan versus partisan or a mixed election, mixed the municipal elections, right? So I think if we are going to discuss this, which I think is subject to a vote here, at least when we're going to discuss it, we have a lot more due diligence to do on it, right? So which is why we shouldn't be talking about it materially this evening. So, Mr. Blackman, to that end, you do have a motion, but you do not have a second.
I will second.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Clariday. All right, so we have a motion now on the floor to cancel our next meeting of this month, wait until October 5th when we hear some feedback from the commission, and then resume meeting next month, but to slow our meetings down to once a month in light of the fact that we don't have the ballot deadline. Is that correct, Mr. Blackman?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So all those in favor, or Madam Clerk, would you mind doing a roll call vote?
That would be fine.
Thank you.
Chair Stevens,
Aye.
Vice Chair Goodstein,
Aye.
Mr. Blackman,
Yes.
Ms. Brown.
Abstain.
I don't really have something for abstentions, but okay.
I'd like to allow it, even if it's not technically
Okay.
allowed. I'd like to allow it.
Ms. Clariday,
Aye.
Mr. Gallegos,
Aye.
Mr. Morgan,
Aye.
Mr. Monroe,
Yes.
Ms. Robert,
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right.
Wow.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, for allowing us to achieve unanimity there. Much
I'm going
appreciated.
to report on
Um,
that too. That's a motion that passed.
Okay. All right. So then we will have a meeting in October, and we will obviously discuss feedback from the commission. And then I think we should probably take a motion now whether or not we want to discuss the partisan versus nonpartisan elections at that meeting. Will note as your chair, I would encourage you to be open to discussion, right? You know, it doesn't hurt, and it's subject to due diligence. Yes, Mr. Goodstein.
I think we should put it on the agenda so that if we get the information back, we can discuss it intelligently and relevantly, or eliminate it. I think we should
Do you
also.
want to make?
Oh, well, I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion that we talk about it at the next meeting. I just don't have enough information on the merits and demerits right now to proceed with the September meeting.
Okay, Mr. Goodstein, would you like to second that?
I'll second that, but I'll suggest an addition. No, never mind. I'll just second that and I'll do another motion later.
Okay, all right. Madam Clerk, do you mind doing another roll call on this one?
Just bear with me for one moment. So the motion is by Ms. Claire Day, seconded by Vice Chair Goodstein, to discuss partisan elections, partisan versus nonpartisan at the next meeting. And may I suggest you set the next meeting, since we're not going to meet in September, the end of September. So, okay, so now voting on whether to discuss the partisan versus nonpartisan election issue at the next meeting. Chair Stevens,
Aye.
Vice Chair Goodstein,
Aye.
Mr. Blackman,
Yes.
Ms. Claire Day,
Aye.
Mr. Gallegos,
Aye.
Mr. Morgan,
Aye.
Mr. Monroe,
Yes.
Ms. Robert. I'm sorry, Ms. Robert, you're muted.
Aye.
And I'm sorry, I read it from the last vote, so I left Ms. Brown out of order. Ms.
Aye.
Brown?
I'm on aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you again, committee, for our unanimous vote there. And Ms. Brown, congratulations. You've gotten this successfally onto the agenda.
You might get something in writing from me. I'll send it through Melissa.
Okay, yeah, no, a lot. I mean, organize ahead, right? Because this is going to be a tough one. No matter what, everyone, be prepared for an interesting discussion, right? All right, so then with that, we do need to discuss when we are going to meet in October. So as I was mentioning before, the commission is on the 5th, and then immediately following Monday is a holiday. So maybe we meet the Wednesday of that week, which would be the 13th. I don't know, Madam Clerk. I mean, do you have insight onto what works and what doesn't work on in October? I'm looking at the city calendar right now, and the 13th is the Historic Resource Preservation Board.
Yeah, so that shouldn't affect us. And they meet, I believe, at 6, and we're going to meet at 5, possibly still via Zoom. So that's fine for me. I don't know about Glenn. Obviously, he had another engagement, so he didn't come tonight.
That could affect me. I do have occasion to appear before the Historic Preservation Board, and there is an item that, that could be a conflict for me, but.
Me as well.
Okay, so hearing that there's some conflicts, what if we actually go back a week, which is oh no, that doesn't work for me.
How is the 12th? How's that Tuesday, the 12th?
That's fine.
That Tuesday's a CRA meeting and works very well for me.
Works fine for me. I don't go to those.
Any objections to Tuesday the 12th?
Nope. Good.
Okay. All right. So then I mean, is there anything else anyone else would like to discuss this evening? Or the plan will be, we will reconvene on the 12th, discuss feedback from the commission, how the meeting on the 5th goes, and then time allowing, begin our discussion on partisan versus nonpartisan elections.
Excellent.
Okay, so do we have a motion to adjourn then?
Adjournment does not require a motion.
No, Mr. Goodstein, I believe it does when you are
I motion
not
to
meeting
adjourn.
as a workshop. Okay, thanks, Mr. Morgan. All right.
Second.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Thank you all.
All right.
Have a nice evening.
Two.
To all those in favor, say aye and bye.
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 Everybody.